There's an amazing number of fundamental engineering contradictions, right? Airplanes deal with, weight and strength. I want something that's light but strong. That's an engineering contradiction. Once I deal with our things, got to be strong but soft. They have to be strong even when they're wet. Some of these very basic things are remarkably consistent across countries across world. So that gives us some sense that these surveys are picking up consistent patterns. And when we know what consistent patterns are, we can look how other things that very much more affect people's well-being. The environment and equality, the nature's institution raging on living, and all kinds of other things that very much more. A team of American ecologists explored this possibility for a species of hummingbirds native to North America's west coast, called Anna's hummingbird. The researchers published their findings in 2022. Anna's hummingbirds live in California's lowlands, but migrate upslope into the cooler mountains during the summer. If climate warming continues, the team hypothesized, the birds might adapt by migrating farther up. Villages were becoming bigger, needing more land to grow crops. This meant livestock were pastured further from villages, often in the mountains. So, dogs' job responsibilities expanded as well. They not only had to travel long distances, they had to scare off hungry bears and wolves. Farmers, wanting the best guardians for their herds, selectively bred their dogs to be larger. There must be better ways to regulate emotion aside from ruminating and venting that help keep aggression at bay. And it turns out, that has a lot to do with how much a person is aware of and able to classify their emotions. This is called emotion differentiation. People with this syndrome have hypersocial behavior like that of dogs, along with certain cognitive deficits. Researchers have found evidence that dogs may have cognitive deficits like those of people with this syndrome. The findings might tell us about far more than just how social devotion to humans evolved in dogs. Given the genetic similarities, they tell us much about how social behavior evolved in humans. By contrast, working together to find food wouldn't help forest-dwelling, insect-eating weaver birds as much, since insects tend to be more widely dispersed. There are a lot more suitable nesting sites in the forest, so these birds don't need to live in colonies, and monogamy makes sense for birds with more solitary lives. It seems that birds that eat bugs don't like to be bugged. If the air between the cloud and the ground is warm, the precipitation will fall as rain. If the rain freezes between the cloud and the ground, it becomes sleet. If the air is in the cloud and it blows very cold, the precipitation will fall as snow. Hail forms when ice crystals get blown upward inside of a cloud over and over. The ice will get bigger and bigger each time until it finally falls from the sky. Other animals communicate without making a sound. Elephants show affection by wrapping their trunks around each other. Whales leap out of the water to send messages to their friends. Bees perform a special dance when they have located nectar in a tree. Even if it's just our pet dog wagging his tail or a pet cat purring, all animals have their own way to convey information to us and each other. When water droplets bump into one another, they stick together and grow in size. They continue to grow until they are too heavy and fall as rain. They even grow as they bump into one another on their journey from the cloud to the ground, and every single raindrop that reaches the ground is made up of 1 million of the original tiny water droplets. When water droplets bump into one another, they stick together and grow in size. They continue to grow until they are too heavy and fall as rain. They even grow as they bump into one another on their journey from the cloud to the ground, and every single raindrop that reaches the ground is made up of 1 million of the original tiny water droplets. It turned out to be that people who had type O were actually able to survive an attack of malaria. It appeared that malaria organism was more readily able to attach to red cells that were type A or type B, and actually kill those patients before they have a chance to reproduce. The extra blood can cause blood vessels to swell and tissues to press on the sensitive membrane that surrounds the brain, resulting in a headache. But not everyone develops a headache at moderately high altitudes, partly because the low oxygen content of the air causes the climber to breathe more often, forcing carbon dioxide out of the blood. If you look closely at the end of your kettle spout, you'll notice that the white stuff doesn't start right away. It begins billowing about half an inch away from the nozzle, with clear gas in between. This clear gas is the actual steam. The billowy white stuff is what the steam turns into when it hits the drier, cooler air of your kitchen. Water can pass through this membrane pretty easily, but substances dissolved in the water can't. Water has a natural tendency to move toward any region where there's a high concentration of dissolved substances. A bacterial cell in a can of sweetened condensed milk finds itself immersed in an extremely concentrated solution of sugar. This differential heating of adjacent land and sea surfaces is the main factor in the formation of sea breezes. A temperature difference of around 3 degrees Celsius is required for sea breeze to start to develop. Other factors that are required for sea breezes to form are light offshore winds at around 3,000 feet. This aids the higher level flow out to sea to get the process started. Around this time in areas north of the Arctic Circle, it is possible to witness the sun not set at all, so a dubbed land of the midnight sun for this very reason. This occurs because the Earth's rotational axis is tilted. The Earth rotates around an axis inclined at an angle of 23.5 degrees in relation to its orbital plane around the Sun. Electricity can also be created through a chemical reaction. An example of this is a battery or fuel cell. Finally, electricity can be created through solid-state conversion, where electricity is generated using the structure and properties of a solid. A specially constructed solid consists of different molecules packed closely together to create an electric current when stimulated. Electricity storage gives grid operators the flexibility to use electricity that otherwise would be wasted. This grid flexibility is highly sought after and has the potential to transform how we produce and consume electricity and is therefore being widely researched and tested. All the humans rely on wildlife as the source of food, and also the source of income. And we talk about our wildlife. If we're talking about fish, we are talking about what is probably the single most important source of protein for human that across the globe. And, so, billions of, or more than a billion of people rely on fish as their primary source of animal protein, and most of these people living in poverty.